Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. I recently started watching the second season of Hynes. It's a hilarious show. I love it a lot, and more importantly, it reminds me a lot of the good old days when I was younger and I was working in a similar setting with just a bunch of degenerates. It was a lot of fun. The work, might have been a little boring and tedious, but just hanging out with the guys all day wasn't exactly a bad thing. Now that I'm self-employed, I really do miss that aspect of having that kind of work community, I guess. Now, one of the things I really like about the show Hynes is the portrayal of the manager, Steven, or Gerbies. He's kind of a dweeb. He shares some Michael Scott-like traits, but all in all, he's a solid human being, someone who is really trying his best to make things work. It seems intuitive that being a manager is a good thing. I mean, the pay generally is a little higher. You usually have to have some work experience or at least a degree of some kind. But really, I mean, from a certain point of view, from my perspective, management is actually like a trap, right? There are a lot of things that you have to do in management that kind of makes the job a lot worse than just being an employee or a regular worker. I remember the first job I interviewed for out of college was at an Avis for a management position. And I remember showing up in New York City in some dusty midtown rental garage where some guy in khakis with the disposition of a drill sergeant basically screamed at me for a good 10 minutes about how tough I needed to be to get the job. But here's the thing, when this speech was given to me, I was already in my 20s. I'd played sports all my life. I was the captain of my football team. I'd given stupid speeches like this. And when you're in a sports setting, it's fine. You want to rile up people. You want to get people worked up. You want to go that tough masculine route. It works in certain situations, but to act like that in a job interview for me was a red flag. Relax, guy. You're renting cars to tourists. You're not in the Navy SEALs, More importantly, I was listening to what this guy was saying, and it all sounded terrible. The job sounded terrible. I'd be making maybe a few $1,000s more than some of the other people working there, but I'd also have a ridiculous amount of responsibilities that I really didn't want. I also didn't want to have to manage 30 and 40-year-old people as a 21-year-old with no experience. I just felt like that's a dumb idea, right? It seemed like this position was a lot of responsibility without really good pay, and also you don't seem to have enough power or control over anything to kind of make the job easier anyway and make the business better. I mean, it clicked to me before this guy was even done with the spiel that this job was not for me. And when he asked me if if this was something that I'd be interested in, I told him to his face, I was like, no, this is not, which is probably a little weird for him. It's like, why would you come and interview for this job? I think part of me also knew that I wasn't going to get this job. There's no way. It just didn't make sense for me. Since then, my view of being a manager really hasn't changed all that much. I admit I don't have much experience in management because I kind of shy away from it anyway. But what I have developed is a pretty healthy respect for people who do choose that position, because it's not a well-paying role in most cases. It's not a really appreciated role, like an appreciated position. It's kind of one of those positions where if you do the right thing, you don't get noticed, and when you do the wrong thing, everyone's, on your case about stuff. It's just it's a low reward position in my opinion. But at the same time, it's such a crucial role and one of the most important positions on any small job site. It's also one of those positions that no one really is properly trained for. I mean, how often do you hear about technical people getting promoted to a manager position in their group? Not because of their management skills, but because of their technical skills. Like those two things are somehow related, right? Now in Andor, one of the first middle-level managers we meet in the wider Imperial system is one Chief Hynes. And I gotta say, he's one of the most memorable characters for me in the first season of Andor. He's really the perfect representation of what managers actually do, I think. He only has a few scenes, maybe 2 in the entire show, but he's very present and memorable in those moments, especially because the first time we see Cyril Karn, he's in Chief Hynes' office trying to have this hilariously awkward conversation. You see, Cyril represents this stereotypical overeager, overachieving rookie who is perhaps a bit too enthusiastic about his job maintaining security on a corporate world. It's a small scene, but it really sets the tone of the show, and honestly, I think this scene kind of won me over to Andor pretty early on. This is the scene that really kind of hooked me in because it's so well done and funny. The dialogue, the dynamics between these two characters in the scene are very rich, and there's a lot of show don't tell that's happening kind of on the peripherals of the scene. So the scene starts with Chief Hynes kind of looking over a report that Cyril Karn has brought to his attention.
This happened when?
Last night, sir. I knew you were leaving this morning, and I wanted to make sure you had all the available information before your departure.
You've been very busy.
2 men are dead, sir. Employees. That's not worth staying up for, then I'm not worthy of the uniform.
You know, just by his demeanor, he comes off as a tired, older man, right? Like, that's the slouching and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if Chief Hynes is just a few months or a few years away from retirement, as long as he can keep all of these knuckleheads beneath him from rocking the boat too much. But rather than assume that this man is lazy, I think something happens to you when you become an older worker. Hopefully you become wiser and you kind of just learn how to pace yourself, right? You understand where you can slack and where you don't. And so you're a much more efficient worker. And you kind of know where the guardrails are when it comes to company behavior. Now, Chief Hynes isn't just working for any corporation, mind you. He's working for Preox Morlana's corporate authority. They don't just operate a business. They control territory, and they run an entire sector. And so even though Chief Hynes is technically in private security, he essentially is providing services that normally the government would. And so I think for him, as someone like Hynes, a job in the security profession is like a job in the military or the government. It's stable. The bar for entry is not that high, so he doesn't have to work too hard to get in. And one can have a pretty good career if they know what they're doing, if they know how to keep their heads down, which Chief Hynes definitely does. One could say that it's even a desirable job, far more desirable than working for the ISB or the Imperial military. I mean, we all saw what happened to Detramiro and Major Partagas, two incredibly competent individuals who took on a lot of responsibility and were ultimately outsmarted by an even more competent revolutionary. Yes, Dedra and Partagas had a lot of power, but this was power they borrowed from the Emperor. And when you borrow power from the Emperor, you better not mess up, because if you do, you end up getting killed or being put into prison. Working in Preox Morlana doesn't carry nearly that much responsibility and therefore stress. For one, understanding the motivations of your corporate overlords is a lot easier than understanding a Sith Lord. Like, Palpatine clearly has wild cats running around inside of his head. The Preox Morlana overlords that Chief Hynes works for are interested in stability. They don't want revolutions, uprisings, or any kind of chaos. They want an environment where their business investments are safe and able to generate money. Everything is pretty much about money, and that makes surviving Preox Morlana, the corporate sector, kind of relatively straightforward. You know, if you understand how to make these people money, you will keep your job. If the Empire had the same focus on generating positive cash flow, it might have lasted longer, but unfortunately, Palpatine was too busy checking off his evil Sith Lord bucket list. So what actions does Chief Hynes take to make sure that his overlords, his bosses, are happy? Well, he keeps his head down. He keeps the peace. He maintains this presence of law and order. But what's actually happening is he's ignoring a lot of crime. I mean, it's a common tactic used by many police forces in our own country. Underreport crime, make the mayor look better for re-election, stuff like that. And so when Cyril enters the office with news about these two dead Preox Morlana security officers, this is really the last thing that Chief Hynes wants on record. The idea of peace officers being killed by criminals in the heart of your corporate headquarters is not a great sign. And Chief Hynes not only reports to corporate leadership, he also has to give briefings to the Empire. And he is definitely not above lying to them to prevent them from swooping in and basically taking his job. It's actually surprising to hear that the Empire was okay with Preox Morlana controlling its own territory. It kind of goes against Palpatine's wish to consolidate all power. But judging by how quickly the ISB and Inspector Blevin sweep in after the failed arrest attempt by Linus Mosk and Cyril, it seems like the Empire was actually waiting for an excuse to just take over everything. Chief Hynes understands that the Empire is a much greater evil than Preox Morlana. He can deal with the Corpo Bros, but the Empire is terrifying. Preox Morlana is driven by greed and profits, but again, people who only care about money are pretty easy to read and understand, but Imperials, they are quite a different group of people. They are unified by an almost zealous belief in the Emperor and his politics. And the culture in the Imperial Academy system has allowed some of the most ruthless and chaotic individuals in society rise to leadership positions. It's essentially a Sith cult, this Empire. And good old Hynes, he understood this, and so he tried to avoid them as much as he could. And it's not that Chief Hynes enjoys working for the corporate sector. He's under no illusion about what he's doing here. But again, this is a much safer alternative to working for the Empire, so this is where he stays. The most interesting thing about this entire scenario is that when Cyril Karn talks about the actual incident involving the two murdered corpos, Chief Hynes makes a prediction about what's happening. He pretty much gets it all right.
But they were murdered.
No. They were killed in a fight. They're in a brothel, which we're not supposed to have, the expensive one, which they shouldn't be able to afford, drinking Rivnold, which we're not supposed to allow. Both of them supposedly on the job, which is a dismissible offence. They clearly harassed a human with dark features and chose the wrong person to annoy.
He's not laughing anymore.
If you've got corpo ID now, it'd be the time to pull it out.
This is the type of wisdom that only, decades of experience, ideally in the field, can give you. I wouldn't be surprised if Hynes was a beat cop or a detective once upon a time. I'm sure he had a similar demeanor to Cyril Karn when he first joined up, but he found out pretty quickly that law enforcement is really not about catching the bad guys and fighting crime or even making people safe. It's really about stability. It's about knowing when to look the other way, when to use force, when to use the gift of gab. It's about being realistic and pragmatic about your situation. Chief Hynes had enough resources to prevent larger bandit or pirate threats from, taking up residence in the local area, but he definitely didn't have enough resources to actually police the entire Preox Morlana sector, just like the Republic and the Empire didn't have, troops to patrol the Outer Rim. Preox faces a localized version of this population dilemma. Simply put, in the most sparsely populated areas of the galaxy, it's hard to generate enough revenue to actually create a robust security force. Chief Hynes knows this, and that's why he wants Cyril to relax and not engage in an investigation that they really don't have the resources to carry out. We can call out Chief Hynes for really not doing his job, but I would argue if he actually did his job, he'd probably get fired, and he'd get a lot of people beneath him also in tricky situations. Chief Hynes actually understands that his mission is futile because his organization is actually built not to do anything at all. It's a corporate security. They just want to save money. And so he tries to do the next best thing, which is to make sure that all of the people underneath them have jobs and continue to make a living. And so, Chief Hynes is not really good at being a police chief necessarily, but he's really good at keeping the Empire away and keeping his people safe. And for that, I think, these people should be grateful. Chief Hynes is just doing the best he can with the limited power he has available. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.